Hello, I hope I am live. So, welcome back. And I'm very happy today to look after the mind. It's a very, very challenging area. Hello, Kate, good morning. So good to have you here. I can see a cup of coffee there. I have one too. So, that's really, really good. So, first of all, understanding the mind and understanding what are we talking about when we talk about the mind. Different ways of looking at the mind, and different ways from science, from spirituality, our own understanding of the mind. But I think the mind is much bigger than the brain, right? So, just to start with a very broad picture, broad sense of what is the mind. So, if we understand the mind as a way to interact with the world. How do we make sense? How do we understand what we are going through in life, what we are experiencing? The mind is everywhere in ourselves. The mind and the nervous system, the coming in of information and going out of information is everywhere, right? From our skin, our organs, our brain, of course, our five senses. So the mind is literally everywhere in ourselves. But of course, to narrow down and to start looking at some patterns of thoughts, which, as I said, is only a very narrow part of the mind, but is a way to start to understand what's going on inside our brain. What are we thinking about, and how do we understand ourselves and our lives? And why is it important to take care of our mind? Why is it important to pay attention to how we are thinking? Because the how we think and how we interpret information, or even how we retain information, is going to define how we feel. And also, it's going to define our actions. It's going to define how we interact with the world. And it's going to define our future. Because if we believe something, we tend to pick up information that is going to confirm our belief system. So, this is super, super important for our well being and our health, to know our belief systems, and also to challenge sometimes when we are not thinking in a helpful way. Challenge ourselves and challenge our way of thinking into a healthier way. There are some really recent studies around the power of expectations. So, some scientists are looking at in healthcare. Okay, so there are some really interesting evidence coming from some studies recently that if the patient understands the treatment and has an expectation of how the treatment can be successful, or understands exactly what's going on, that has a positive impact on the treatment. And things that are usually thought to be disconnected from the mind. So let's say heart surgery, for example, is one of the aspects that has been studied. That if people had more attention and more understanding of the process and an expectation of how the healing was going to happen, that had positive outcomes, significant positive outcome, compared to the people who didn't know what was going to happen. So the body and the mind, they really, really work together. They are one thing, right? There's not separation between body and mind. This is how our society has been separating things, but actually we need to bring together, because bringing together makes it much more powerful to make changes. So, hello to everybody who is arriving here, and if you have any questions, just pop into the comments area, because it takes a while for them to come through, and sometimes I didn't answer questions because they came in quite late. So, if you have anything you want to say or comment, just post it there, and if I miss anything, I'll try to answer later. So, as I was saying, the broad sense of the mind is much bigger than the brain. It's much bigger than our five senses, too, because there is also a way to understand the mind as a collective mind. And Jung was one of the psychologists who really looked into the collective consciousness and the collective unconscious, too. So, the mind can be a huge, huge, huge field of investigation and understanding. But for the purpose of this self-care lesson, I'm going to look at the more rational mind, okay, our thoughts, our perception. So I'm going to talk more about this, what we normally think about the mind, okay? What are the aspects of the mind that make us different from some of the other species. So some of the functions of the mind are perception. So as I said, the five senses, our body, all of our nervous system, they are part of the mind because they are information receiving equipment, if we can call it like that, okay? Another aspect of the mind is attention. So once we have information coming in, and that's all the time, right? We are all the time receiving information from outside and from inside of ourselves. The other part of the mind is attention. So this is one that we can really work with and direct our attention to certain aspects and divert our attention from other things. And being conscious of our attention, where our attention goes, is very, very important in therapy and in life in general. Okay, so attention is one of the very important aspects of the mind. Other aspects, knowledge, language, information, as I said. So language, communication, understanding of things, how we make sense of experiences, this is all part of mind. Memory, remembering. But as I said, it's interesting to think about memory and remember the memories in our bodies too, right? Brilliant work called a book called The Body Keeps the Score. It talks about how the body really remembers traumas and remembers difficult experiences. So the mind is beyond the brain. Keep that in mind, okay? Keep that in mind, that our mind is everywhere in ourselves. So also our belief systems, explanations, and stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell other people, all this is like subject of the mind, and all the different intelligences. So the musical intelligence, the movement intelligence. Some people are very good with their bodies and learning choreographies or learning sports, and some people are very good with verbal intelligence, emotional intelligence. All this is part of the mind, all that we can do and remember and be good at, our skills. Consciousness, knowing what we know, knowing that we know. So awareness and self-reflection, self-awareness. And there is a big area again of exploration around consciousness and consciousness beyond the human too. There are some interesting thoughts around non-human consciousness around us and learning that nature, plants have consciousness too. They have feelings, they have reactions. That this is something that's coming back into the agenda of many scientists. So again, summarizing, why is it so important to take care of your mind and be familiar with your patterns of thoughts and your belief systems and all the things that I said? Why is it so important? Because what we believe, we live according to our beliefs. What we think defines our reality. So we need to spend a bit of time, I would say every day, checking in on how are you thinking? Is your thought pattern is stuck in a certain way that's not helping you? Or is it time to shift something? And at the end of the lesson, I'm going to give you a very practical and easy, and an exercise I love is a different type of way of thinking about yourself. And it's very practical, and I do it, and I recommend to people to do it, and it's usually very helpful. But it's not how we imagine, okay? So it's not how we imagine to silence the mind. We need to kind of be quite intelligent to address our mind, because our mind is very clever and can justify and create diversions and explanations that looks like we're doing the right job or good job, but actually we're detaching from our heart or from our instincts, and sometimes it can confuse us in relationships or our interactions with the world. So it's very important to have clarity of mind and work towards that. So the nature of the mind is to always be busy, always be busy. So I think, oh, I have such a busy mind, I can't meditate. Yeah, so do we, right? So everybody does, because the mind is busy. It's its job to be like a computer, categorizing things and searching for information and creating a little story and making connection. Oh, this happened yesterday, I wonder what's going to happen next. So or searching for connections that were not there before, making a new connection. So the mind has its job, and the mind has also a job to try to control life, trying to make sense of life. Like, I know what's going to happen. It's trying to predict the future. That is tricky because a lot of times we can't. There's a lot of factors that we are out of control. And when the mind goes on a mission to control the environment or control people, it can be really, really difficult and can create a lot of frustration, a lot of negativity in your mind and in your life, because the mind is going on a tangent and detaching from other parts of knowledge, like your heart or your wisdom. They'll say, okay, this I cannot control. Let me try to find another alternative here. So basically, the mind has this mission of making sense and trying to explain to you, try to guide you into something. And it's our job to kind of quiet the mind and see if that makes real sense to us, or if it's pushing away our feelings, or denying our instincts, or not fulfilling our dreams, because the mind can be sabotaging ourselves too. So there is a lot going on, right, in the mind. But it's the nature of the mind, as I said. So it's no point fighting. That's why I said we have to be clever. We have to be even cleverer than our minds. We have to be more intelligent than our old patterns and our old way of thinking. We've got to be creative, okay? But there are many ways to work with the mind and learn to be clear, because I think that is the main quality, to have a clear mind and clear train of thoughts, okay? So just some signals here of unhealthy mind patterns that you may identify. And as I said, it's very important that we know what we are working with. How can we change something if we don't even know what's going on, right? So some signs and some things to watch out for unhealthy states of mind or unhelpful states of mind. It can be trapped in the past. It can be always referring to the past. And also repeating old patterns of neglect, of abuse, of violence, and self-sabotaging or fear. So this is an area that a lot of people come to therapy for, because they feel stuck. They feel they're going through the same old painful pattern and they can't get out of it by themselves, right? So it's really, really important to pay attention. If this is going on, something that you can't shift by yourself, you may need a bit of help, because the mind can sort of go into this autopilot. Because as I said, the mind is very clever. It's trying to save energy and save time. Learning something new takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of risk. And the mind is set up in a way to go into autopilot. It's a bit like a computer. So, the old stories are going to tend to repeat, because from survival point of view, you survived. I don't know what quality of life you have, but you survived. So the brain, the logical mind is not interested in the quality of life. It's just interested in survival. So the past can keep repeating because you made it here. So there's nothing wrong, just keep going. But it's not that way, right? Sometimes the patterns of, neglect or abuse or, difficulties in relationships, they are very painful and the quality of life is not as good as it could be. So that's one sign of unhealthy minds, that we're stuck in the past and stuck in these old patterns. Another sign of unhealthy mind, when the defense mechanisms are very active and the person has no awareness of what's going on. So mechanisms like projection, which is the person saying other people have qualities or problems that they have. They don't see themselves. So let's say I'll say, oh, this person, they are so insensitive. They have no patience. They are insensitive to my needs and all this. And I'm projecting that because those things that I have, those qualities I have, but I cannot recognize in myself. So I keep projecting them onto other people. And denial of your own issues, denial of your bad patterns or your addiction or your self-destructive patterns. It's a major defense mechanism that can be very active. Blame and shame is all part of this projection and denial too. So blaming other people for your difficulties and shaming other people or shaming yourself for difficulties. All these are patterns of the mind that are quite unhelpful. Unhelpful for healing, unhelpful for feeling good with yourself or feeling good with life. So it's very important that you notice if this is going on And sometimes we do need some help from somebody else because it's difficult to see ourselves. But it's definitely a sign of an unhealthy state of mind when people are really stuck in those sort of mechanisms. And another sign is that prejudice or unquestioned beliefs and meanings. So let's say, like myself, I grew up in a very, very traditional society that didn't question, the role of racism or the role of sexism, in the lives of people at the time I was growing up. It's changing a bit now, but it's still, I grew up with those belief systems around me. It took me a long time to understand what that meant, and I'm still on that journey somewhere where, wow, that's actually happening. People are very, very prejudiced there. People are very sexist, and I internalized some of those. Some of those became mine for a long time until I start questioning those. So we come into life, into a society, a family, or a group of people that will have their belief systems and their meanings, and some of them you may agree and you continue on following those belief systems, but some of them may not be helpful anymore. And you may look at them as things that limit your life and that cause a lot of pain for you. So you need to sort of analyze your belief systems and your meanings of what's going on and check if they're still valid for you. Because you may have moved on decades later and still have the same story or the same belief system as you had as a child, and that may not be appropriate for you anymore. So checking those stories and beliefs are very important, and prejudice as well. Another sign of unhealthy mind is lack of flexibility, which goes alongside this sort of old belief systems, right? So lack of flexibility, thinking all or nothing. I'm great or I'm terrible. I either have 100% right, perfectionism, or I am not worthy of anything, right? This sort of radical way of thinking, all or nothing, and lack of flexibility. So a healthy mind is going to be more flexible. It's going to go into look into process rather than yes or no type of things, right? This type of answers. Um, or this duality, is all good or bad or great or awful. This is very unhelpful because a lot of our lives happen in the gray areas, right? And our growth happens in those gray areas too. So looking into that, looking into your own mindset, if it's too much into fixed mindset, or if you are flexible and think, okay, I'm learning something, I'm moving on, and yeah, it's not perfect, but I can see I'm making progress. Being very kind to yourself is a healthier way of thinking. And the other thing to notice with the unhealthy mind is very, very busy. Million thoughts coming at the same time. You can't concentrating on thing. You can't, follow a train of thoughts, or you can't develop an idea because another thought comes in and another thought comes in, and then is jumping from one thing to another. And of course, there may be reasons for that, but in general, we need to learn to calm our mind and to have different states of mind that are not so busy, because that's very exhausting. So this is an overall of the sort of introduction lesson to the self-care for the mind, because as I said, it's such a vast subject. But I think understanding what the mind is about, what it does, and what is sort of unhelpful state of mind, you can start to pay attention to yourself and start to take care of yourself and your mind in a way that can make some positive changes. Okay, but I'll give you an exercise that is very, it's not even an exercise, it's more like a technique that can be helpful when the busy mind has so much to say and you can't concentrate, or you can't sleep, or you can't, I don't know, you can't do your work because your mind is so busy and so turbulent. So there are two things that I would like to suggest. One is to have a list of everything that you're worried about, or everything that's in your mind. Okay, so people call it brain dump. So you can set alarm for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and during those 10 minutes, I think 10 minutes is better because there is a lot there, right? Usually. So 10 minutes, and you write down every single thought, every single thing that comes to your mind. Well, I'm worried about this bill. Well, I'm worried about the weather. I'm worried about my child. I'm worried about the state of affairs in the world. I'm worried about tomorrow. I'm worried about my health. And that's quite common actually, to have all these worries. But they are usually sort of in the background, and we're trying to do something, but they kind of keep pestering us, right? So you can write everything down, every single of your thoughts or your negative thoughts, and just look at them very clearly and say, okay, I can see you, I hear you. There is a part of me that is really worried, that is really afraid, that is really stressed. And I'm giving you this time to express yourself, okay, during these 10 minutes. That can it's just a matter of trying and see if that helps, okay? And it may be that you may need to do this every day for a while if you are going through a period where your mind is really, really busy. Eventually, you don't need to write it down. I now don't need to write it down. I can do it just mentally. And then I can clear my mind and go on to what I need to do next. But in the beginning, if you're learning to do this, it can be helpful to write everything down. The process of writing it down engages a part of the brain that is bringing sense and calm into yourself. Okay, there is science behind this. It's not just, oh, I think this is a nice thing to do. There's actual science in writing down, using language to express how you're thinking and express your thoughts and give voice to those thoughts. So when you're doing this exercise, you're doing very important things. You're paying attention to your mind. You're learning to be an observer of your mind. Okay, because when you're writing, you're also using your higher capacities of your mind to self-reflect. So this is a very, very powerful way to start to develop this observer inside of you that is like a self-care, a healer for yourself. Okay, very important. So it sounds like something quite simple, but it's very powerful. The other part of it, which is just a variation that you can also do, there's a lot around today about being grateful and gratitude, as a powerful practice, especially people who are into the spirituality and new age type of thing. And yes, it is. It has also been studied, and being in a grateful mindset is really, really powerful and important. But sometimes we're not there, right? Sometimes we cannot force ourselves to be grateful. We can't force ourselves to feel in a way that we're not feeling. So one thing you can do is to clear your mind from all the things that you are ungrateful. I am ungrateful for. I am ungrateful for the difficulties I experienced as a child. I'm ungrateful for this government or whatever, right? So you make the list, and then you can do the grateful list if you want to. But sometimes we are fighting within ourselves because we should be feeling or thinking in a certain way. Or this is the story we tell ourselves, right? I should be doing this, or I should be better at this. But actually, we're not. And then we need to meet ourselves at that place that we are not so good. The place where our mind is very confused. The place where we are ungrateful or resentful or unhappy or worried. And then that can be shifted. But if we don't know, and if we are in denial of those experiences and those thoughts, they tend to continue in the background or sometimes in the foreground of our mind and interfere with what we're trying to do. So it's very important to take care of our mind. It's not something we can ignore because our mind is running the show. I get quite excited talking about it, right? Is running the show. Our mind is the director. And when you take care of yourself and you create this part within yourself that is a different type of director. So you may have two going on for a while, but later on you can have one that is quite compassionate, that is quite understanding, and knows how to calm this sort of more anxious or worried mind, or this more stubborn, stuck in a certain way mind. So yes, I think this can be very, very helpful ways to start paying attention to your mind and clear your mind. So these are the topics I had for today. I was planning to keep it short to about 15 minutes, but I'm aware it's gone up to almost half an hour. And I'd like to see if there is any questions or anything people want to comment or ask about what I've been talking today, or about any of the other lessons, and I'll finish shortly. And we can carry on um, the questions also on Instagram or on the emails as well. When I send them, please reply and ask anything. It'd be really good to know if you find this helpful so I can adjust. Or if there's anything else you want to know about self care for the mind, and I can prepare a lesson or prepare a live lesson for that. Thank you. I see you next week. And next week will be relationships. So there will be another rich and busy lesson. Take care, everyone. Thank you.